Hello, good evening, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to UCAN, Unacademy's Current Affairs Navigator, and in today's session, we will have a discussion covering current affairs articles from the Indian economy area. Now, let's have a look at the topics. The first topic that I'll be discussing is the statement of Niti Aayog chairperson or Niti Aayog CEO, who stated that India should be part of regional comprehensive economic partnership. But beyond that, there are multiple statements which has been provided by the CEO. Let's have a detailed discussion regarding that. Second article, there are two very important reports which have been published by different agencies in the last 1 week. And both of these reports discuss missing women in India's workforce. We'll have a look at it. Third one, the burning topic, that is the issue of paddy procurement in Punjab. Why are the farmers protesting? What is the issue involved? What is the solution to that? And fourth article, the government very recently has announced equity infusion in Food Corporation of India. We'll cover it as a part of procurement issue all around. Fifth article, RBI has increased the amount of gold that it has held within the domestic market. Now, what is the meaning of that? When you say RBI is holding gold within India, does it also mean RBI is holding gold outside India? In what form? Why it is holding outside India? And why in the form of a gold? We'll understand all of it. Next, in addition to this, there is one more article. Even in today's Hindu newspaper, this was discussed. That is the issue of diammonium phosphate, the issue of fertilizer. Seventh article, Finance Ministry in a report, monthly review report, has raised concern regarding slowdown in the urban demand. What is the issue all about? Let's discuss. And finally, the eighth and final article that I'll be discussing today will be the concept of Kanda Express. What is the importance of that? Is it the only initiative of Government of India to reduce the prices of vegetables in the retail market? These are the 8 very important articles that I'll be discussing. Now, before I start with the first article, I want all of you to spare and listen to me with utmost, let's say, attention for the next 30 seconds. Many of you, when I'm discussing, you'll keep on making notes. You'll keep on writing, scribbling something that I discuss. What I want you people to do in this session is stop writing and listen with all of your attention. Now, many of you will retort to this and say, sir, if you want me to listen, who will make the notes? My answer to that question is, don't worry. I've already prepared notes on all the 8 topics that I'm going to discuss with you. The handout is ready. All you need to do is essentially scan this QR code. You'll be taken to a Telegram channel. And once the session is over, after the session is over, in the next 10 to 15 minutes after the end of the session, you'll be able to download the PPT with annotations as well as the handouts. So I'm pretty sure a 16-pager handout, a 16-page notes for all these 8 topics is more than sufficient for your UPSC preparation. So all I want you to do is sit with attention. It's a dinner time. I know that. Please don't sleep off. Focus and listen to the lecture very carefully. And in addition to that, if you like these initiatives that we are taking for you, please encourage us. Hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel if you're yet to subscribe. And if any of your friends are preparing for the civil services examination, do recommend our videos and our channel to them as well. So let me start the discussion. If you're yet to scan the QR code, scan it now. I'll go to the first part, or let's say the first article. There was an article in Hindu newspaper as well as multiple other newspapers wherein statement of the Niti Aayog CEO, Mr. BVR Subramaniam, was quoted. the CEO was giving a lecture, and during the lecture, he says, India should be part of RCEP, CP, TPP. And in addition to this, he has also gave a statement regarding global value chain participation, the China plus one strategy, India having very high tariffs, why should India reduce the tariffs, etc., etc. Now, covering all of this, I'll take one more article, again where the statement of the same chair, CEO, B.V.R. Subramaniam was given, that is, India needs to grow beyond, right? Let's say if it needs to grow beyond the middle income, it needs to reduce tariffs, promote trade. So I'll club all of these and have a wholesome discussion under these headings. First one is, why is that Government of India is reviewing the free trade agreements? Second one is, SOPs for FTA. This is an update. Please discuss or listen to my discussion very carefully. SOPs, standard operating procedures, will be prepared by the government henceforth whenever they go for a negotiation of a trade agreement. Third heading will be global value chains. What has been the status? What is the concern regarding India's participation in the GVC? And finally, has India been successful in addressing, or let's say promoting, the idea of a China plus one strategy? So these are the four headings. Let's go one by one. All of this is connected to what the CEO of Niti Aayog is actually saying. So point number one, Government of India in the recent times itself has signed multiple trade agreements. Now, whenever you talk about trade agreements, there are multiple types of trade agreements. One, government could sign a free trade agreement, FTA. Government also can sign preferential trade agreement, PTA. In addition to FTA and PTA, a much more comprehensive kind of agreement is essentially CECA, Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, and Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So if you take all the agreements, trade agreements of course, that the Government of India has signed, there are over 14, or there are more than, right, 14 such agreements. 14 essentially are trade agreements, that is, the government has signed with another country, and there are 6 PTAs, preferential trade agreements. So 14 FTAs and 6 PTAs. Now many of you will ask me, sir, should I remember this number? The answer to that question is, please do not memorize this. Reason being, right now, government is negotiating with multiple countries. Right now, you will memorize this. By the time you write the exam, the number could have already changed. So, as of now, the data is 14 FTAs and 6 PTAs. And those who are wondering, sir, what is PTA, what is FTA? These are trade agreements. In PTA, very small part of the trade is agreed, covered, where tariffs are reduced. And in case of FTA, a larger portion of the trade that is conducted between two countries or multiple countries will be targeted, covered, and the tariffs are reduced. And the whole objective of signing such trade agreements is that the trading partners, that is the members of the group, should be able to benefit out of this. But in case of India, Government of India signed a trade agreement back in the year 2009 with South Korea. In 2009 with South Korea. In 2010 with ASEAN. And one more agreement was signed by the government in the year 2011 with Japan. And after this also, multiple trade agreements have been signed. One of the latest trade agreements that India has signed with another country is the India-UAE trade agreement that is being implemented for almost 18 months now. So point number one is, India has signed multiple trade agreements. But what has been India's experience? India's experience upon analysis shows that the other trading partners have been able to get more benefit of these trade agreements rather than India. For example, if you take ASEAN, India-ASEAN trade agreement, according to an analysis which was done by Niti Aayog, it shows that after signing the trade agreement, the bilateral trade, rather than bilateral, it will be India plus ASEAN, which is a group of 10 countries, the overall trade actually increased. But at the same point of time, the trade deficit that India has with ASEAN also has increased. And another one example, India-UAE trade agreement. Like I said, this trade agreement is being implemented for around 18 months as of now. But after signing the trade agreement, India has realized that there is a sudden inflow of silver into India through UAE. There is a sudden inflow of gold into India through UAE. And an interesting fact regarding this is, because some of you will be thinking, sir, once you sign the trade agreement, automatically imports will increase. But what is the interesting fact about it? The interesting fact is, India, when they import from UAE, UAE doesn't manufacture silver. Which means some other country is exporting silver through UAE into India, which is abuse of the trade agreement that we have signed with UAE. And that is the precise reason now Government of India has called for review of trade agreement with South Korea. It has asked for review, which is already being conducted, of trade agreement with ASEAN. Even the trade agreement with Japan is under the review. And now we have asked for a review of trade agreement with UAE. Now let's analyze why India is not able to leverage these trade agreements. Why is that other trading partners within the group, why they are able to export more compared to India, even after the trade agreement is signed? Multiple reasons have been cited for this. For example, point number 1, there is a concept of rules of origin. Remember this. There is a concept of rules of origin. Right? Rules of origin essentially state that whenever you import something from a country, let's say I import something from UAE, they will have to prove that certain value addition has taken place in UAE. That is, they have not merely imported something from third country and exported to India. That should not be allowed. But in many cases, rules of origin have not been implemented in a very strictest manner. These have been flouted, and that is the precise reason the imports from many countries with whom we have the trade agreement, third country which is not part of the trade agreement, mind you, they have been able to leverage this trade agreement, route their products through the country with whom we have signed trade agreements, thereby the third country getting the benefit, and from the second country with whom we have the trade agreement, their exports will increase and the trade deficit with India will also start increasing. That is, India's trade deficit in this agreement will start increasing. Everybody is okay with the first problem, why we are not able to leverage the free trade agreement? Second reason, which has been cited by many of the experts, is that many of the experts say that whenever you import something under the free trade agreement from a country, you will have to submit lot of documents. You will have to submit lot of proof when you want to import and get the advantage or the benefit of, let's say, 0% tariff. But the experts argue that because the compliance requirements, this is called as a compliance requirement. Because of this compliance requirement, I will have to submit lot of documentation. It's a time-consuming process. I will hire an expert, which is again a costly affair for me. The overall cost under the agreement will basically outweigh the benefits that I might get. In a sense, by importing under FTA, I might get a benefit of tax reduction of 5%. But because the charges are so high, the overall charges that I pay will end up being much higher than, right, let's say the 5% benefit. Right, so these are some of the issues which have been raised by various experts to prove that India has not been able to leverage these free trade agreements and other countries are able to leverage. And the third very important point to note here is the tariffs as well as non-tariff barriers. Whenever you sign an agreement, you will agree to reduce the tariff barriers. And according to United Nations, according to United Nations, it says that between 1999 and 2022, between 1999 to 2022, the tariff barriers have reduced from overall 13% to 7%. The tariff barriers have gone down. But at the same point of time, the non-tariff barriers, that is, any other restriction which will disrupt the import and export apart from a tariff, apart from a tax, is called as a non-tariff barrier. The non-tariff have increased during the same period from 53% to 72%. Now, those who are basically worried, sir, what is this 13%, 7%? It basically represents what is the value of tariffs and the value of non-tariffs imposed and collected as a value of the total trade. So what you can see is, according to the United Nations analysis, the non-tariff barriers have increased. And India's exports to many ASEAN countries, which is basically part of the trade agreement, they face lot of non-tariff barriers. And as a result of this, our exports have not been much higher, but their exports into India have been much, much higher. So everybody is okay with the first part of the discussion here. Why is India reviewing the free trade agreement? Is it okay? Now, second part of the discussion. What is the solution then? What is the solution? Many experts looking at Government of India demanding a review of India-UAE free trade agreement have basically raised one pertinent question. Why is Government of India demanding a review of a free trade agreement which has been implemented hardly for 18 months? Very, very recent. I hope you understand. In other cases, with ASEAN, with Japan, with South Korea, these agreements were signed in 2009, 10 and 11. You are reviewing them because it's been more than 13 years, 14 years. Understandable. But on the other hand, what is the reason? Why do you want to review a free trade agreement which has been signed very, very recently and hardly 18 months are over? Their argument is, it shows that when we negotiated trade agreement with UAE, we did not consider all the facets. We did not consider all the aspects of the areas that are being covered under the free trade agreement. And that shows basically that we are not good at negotiating with other countries when we sign trade agreements. That's the reason Government of India now says by the end of the current year, by the end of this current year, government will come out with Standard Operating Procedure, SOP, Standard Operating Procedure for the Free Trade Agreement. Now, what will be given in the SOP? According to the issue right now, according to the statements given by the government officials, it will basically cover step by step how negotiations will be conducted with other countries, how negotiations shall be conducted. Point number 2, in recent times, the trade negotiations are becoming very, very complicated. Why? There are multiple issues of rising importance or increasing importance which are becoming part and parcel of free trade agreement negotiations. For example, we are negotiating a trade agreement with European Union. We are also negotiating trade agreement with UK. We are negotiating trade agreement with USA. There are multiple areas such as intellectual property rights which are expected to be covered under the trade agreement. Labor issues, labor movement, investments, sustainable growth, etc. All these are expected to be covered under the new free trade agreements that we will be signing henceforth. Which means the FTAs compared to the traditional FTAs now are covering much more higher number of subjects, which is a complicated issue. And these are the subjects which were not covered earlier. That's the reason the SOP will also have certain chapters or provisions as to how to negotiate in these new areas. Second point. Third point, it will also provide information regarding to evaluate whatever is being discussed in the trade agreement. That is, if Government of India will agree that certain import from UK will be allowed at 0% tariff rather than 15%. Now under the SOP, what will be the impact of it? There will be a chapter to study that. How much will be the revenue loss for the government? There will be provision to even calculate that. So Government of India is expected to provide this standard operating procedure, which will be a guiding light for Indian side to negotiate, review, etc. the existing as well as the new free trade agreements that India will be signing in the coming days. So this is the second very important point. Please remember this. And again, all of this is there in the handout. Please don't worry. all of this is there in the handout. Point number 3. One of the ways that India can become a developed country in the coming days, according to the Niti Aayog CEO, is that India should promote participation in the global value chains. Now, what is the issue? Simple point. Global value chain essentially means the production supply is distributed across multiple countries rather than being concentrated within one region. For example, you want to manufacture a smartphone. The cover of the smartphone will be manufactured in one country. The chip used in the smartphone will be manufactured in another country. Right? The RAM used will be manufactured in another country. The processor will be manufactured in another country, so on and so forth. So when you basically spread the production across multiple regions rather than concentrating in one region, this is essentially the concept of a global value chain. And whenever you talk about global value chain, there are two types of integration here. Listen to this very carefully. One is called as a forward GVC and the second one is called as a backward GVC. Forward and backward. What is the basic difference? If I manufacture something, export it to another country, and the manufacturer, second company will use this as an input. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. I produce something, I export it to, let's say, another manufacturer present in another country. They will use this as an input. For me, it will be a forward GVC. Forward GVC. And on the other side, imagine you're a manufacturer in India. You will import something from another country, use it as an input in your manufacturing. This is called as a backward GVC. And what is the importance of this? According to various experts, when you manufacture a final good and export it, there is a potential to generate more profits. You will be able to earn more revenue. Contribution to employment as well as GDP as well as manufacturing will be much better when you import something and manufacture a final good and export it, rather than simply manufacturing an input and exporting it to someone who will prepare a final good. So India's participation in forward GVC was very, very high. Various experts have cited this. Even Economic Survey published recently has cited this and says India's participation in the backward GVC was lesser earlier and now it has increased. It has increased. There are various products such as agriculture commodities where there is a lot of backward integration, backward GVC participation has taken place and we are able to export more and more. We need to promote more and more of backward GVC participation. That's the second point. Having said so, the experts look at various levels of participation and they basically point out that India's participation in the GVC even today it is very weak. It is very, very less compared to other countries. For example, when you take participation of India as a GVC as a percentage of total trade, what is the value of exports or imports under GVC done out of total trade that is conducted? India's GVC participation is 40.3%. And have a look at this. USA has 43.7%. UK has 48%. Japan has 47%. South Korea has 56% and Malaysia has around 60%, which means there is still a scope. India is lagging behind. You need to promote more and more participation within the GVC. That's a second or third very important point. Please make a note of this. Remember this. When you read the handout, please make a note of this because in UPSC, if they ask you, how can you make India as a developed country? How can you make India a manufacturing hub, just like China? This is a very important point that you should mention without failure. And the last point which has been raised by the CEO is a China plus one strategy. He says, we should promote a China plus one strategy in India. China plus one strategy as a concept is nothing new. It's an old concept in the sense it's been discussed for more than a decade now. But what is essentially a China plus one strategy? You need to locate your activities, let's say manufacturing activity or other operations. You will have to diversify this rather than being concentrated only in China. Because in the last 3 decades, multiple multinational corporations, MNCs from the Western markets have invested huge amount of money in China, have set up China as a manufacturing facility or a global factory. But in recent times, multiple events have taken place, which has actually forced other countries to opt for a China plus one strategy. For example, USA and European Union have imposed multiple restrictions, barriers on the exports which are done by China into USA. For example, electric vehicles, etc. And with Mr. Donald Trump becoming the president now, it is expected that further more tariffs, more barriers would be imposed on Chinese exports. So many countries, for example, very recently itself, that is in today's newspaper itself, there was one article which said that with Mr. Donald Trump becoming the president of USA, now Apple is expected to further increase its investment in India and produce more. Is it okay? Right? Basically, invest more in India and produce more. Essentially, meaning more barriers will be imposed and Apple have to invest in India and produce more of these phones and export it. Done? Everybody is able to understand this? So one is let's say the fights which are happening or the trade wars which are taking place. Second one is pandemic. Right? Essentially during pandemic, the supply chain essentially was disrupted. It was disrupted. And that basically taught us a lesson that it is very dangerous to be dependent only on one country's supply. That is also one of the reasons why countries want to diversify their production now. And India offers a huge opportunity for these countries. Reasons are: 1, Government of India is willing to implement multiple reforms. For example, government has implemented goods and service tax, which has basically revolutionized indirect taxation structure. It has promoted ease of doing business. It is willing to implement labor reforms. Government of India has shown inclination to implement multiple other reforms to promote production in India. For example, PLI, Production Linked Incentive, where manufacturing is being promoted. And more importantly, this is very important point now. More importantly, India has one of the highest number of consumers in the world. The market size of India is very, very large. And the companies such as Apple, they want to leverage it. They want to use this opportunity, basically diversify their production, set up units in India and produce and sell not only the domestic market but also export to other countries. That is basically why the CEO of Niti Aayog is saying that we need to leverage the China plus one strategy and attract more and more investments. This will help us in becoming a developed country by 2047. Mind you, by 2047, Government of India has set a target of taking India's GDP to $30 trillion. By 2047, the target that has been set up by Government of India is making India a $30 trillion economy. Right? So these are certain very important points associated with this part of discussion where the Niti Aayog CEO says you need to do A, B, C, D so that India becomes a developed country. Done? Now, based on this, I've given you an MCQ here. Please solve the MCQ. You have 60 seconds. After that, I'll start discussing. Read the statements carefully. Please read the statements carefully. Okay, let's start. India is part of multiple FTAs, PTAs and customs unions. Statement 1 is wrong. Statement 1 is wrong. India is part of multiple FTAs. Yes. Multiple PTAs. Yes. I've told you the data also. 14 and 6 respectively. Customs union. What do you mean by customs union? Where the group, that is member countries within the group, will have the same tariff whenever they conduct a trade with the rest of the world. Are you able to understand this idea? If India and other country is part of a customs union, both of these countries will apply same tariff whenever they import something from any other country. Is India part of customs union? No. It is not part of a customs union, but yes, it is part of multiple PTA and FTA. India is present only in forward GVC and absent in backward GVC. No, this statement is also incorrect. It is present both in forward as well as backward GVC. In fact, I told you the contribution, or let's say the percentage of the total trade within the backward GVC is actually increasing in the coming days. So second statement wrong. SEPA is more comprehensive than a free trade agreement. SEPA is more comprehensive than a free trade agreement. SEPA stands for Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. What is the basic difference? In free trade agreement, focus is always on trade in goods and services. SEPA focuses on trade in goods and services. Beyond this, it will also focus on labor. It will also focus on intellectual property right. It will focus on investment, etc., etc. Essentially, look at the name, you'll understand Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Comprehensive means obviously coverage has to be bigger, coverage has to be greater. So third statement is correct. Only one statement is true. Right option is option A. Only one is correct. Done? Now, if you have any kinds of doubts, please hold on to your doubts. At the end of the session, I will answer all of your queries. Have patience. I've also given a descriptive question here. Discuss why the trade agreements have not yielded expected benefits for India. Recommend measures to address the issue. We have discussed what are the issues, why India is not able to leverage trade agreements. And I've also given certain recommendations, that is higher participation in GVC. Having, right, let's say review of the trade agreements based on provisions such as rules of origin, etc. Right, a promotion of China plus one strategy. All of these, right, you can basically use to write as a solution or a way forward to come out of this particular mess, or let's say this problem of increasing trade deficit despite signing the trade agreements. Done? So this is a descriptive question. Please try it. Let me go to the second topic here. In recent times, I'm pretty sure, irrespective of which national daily newspaper you're reading, this one topic has appeared multiple times in the last 2 weeks. Let's discuss in threadbare what is actually the issue all about. In recent times, there is a protest which has been conducted by multiple farmers in Punjab. Basically, Kisan unions are protesting against procurement operations of the state government as well as the procurement operations of the central government. Now listen to me very carefully. Whenever you use the term procurement, it essentially means the government is purchasing food grains and paying MSP. Simple. Government purchases and pays MSP. Government of India, that is Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, announces MSP for more than 20 crops. In fact, the data is 22 crops MSP and one crop, that is for sugarcane, it is FRP. But the argument here is, whenever they procure the food grains, they will have to pay MSP. Now the issue is that in the state of Punjab, paddy and wheat, please remember, these are the mainly produced agriculture commodities. So much so that In case of the state, 25% of the GDP actually comes from this. Right? So the farmers mainly depend on the procurement operations are done by the state government as well as central government. The center procures food grains. The center procures food grains through Food Corporation of India. And the state government here, the Punjab state government also is involved in procurement. It procures the food grains through its agencies such as Punj Grain and also Markfed. So these are the two agencies of the state government which are involved in procurement of the food grain. So this point is clear. Center also procures, state also procures. So before you jump to conclusion, is it the mistake of the center or the state? Understand both of them are involved in the procurement. But generally what happens? Please look at the process. I'll come back to this. Don't worry. Generally what happens? I'll just give you a flow chart. Here is, right, let's say the paddy. Once the paddy is harvested, once the farmer will harvest paddy, they will take the paddy to the market. That is mandi. Once they take the paddy to the market, that is to the mandi, the Food Corporation of India will procure the food grains. Even the state government agencies are there. They will procure the food grain and pay MSP to the farmer. They'll pay MSP. Now, once they procure the food grain, for example, FCI, once they procure the food grain, they will hand over the food grains to the millers. That is private sector companies which are involved in removing the husk, polishing of the food grain, etc. So the food grains are handed over to the millers. Millers basically will hand over the polished food grain, that is rice grains, to Food Corporation of India. Now this rice grain which is collected by FCI from the miller will be used by the FCI for distribution purposes. Everybody is able to understand the sequence here. Sequence is important. Why, you will understand in a minute. Now, in all the cases, FCI doesn't procure the food grain. In all the cases, what generally happens is, in case of FCI procuring, instead of FCI, right, instead of FCI, there is also FTAs, that is commission agents. The commission agents will also procure food grains on behalf of Food Corporation of India, and they will collect a certain commission and hand over the food grains to FCI. Now understand the sequence and I'll tell you what is the issue. What is the issue? Why there's a problem of procurement in Punjab and what are the consequences? Because this has a very grave consequence now. Let me explain to you. Point number one, what is happening with regards to procurement? The first reason is, whenever the Food Corporation of India will procure food grain from the farmer, they will hire labor. They will hire labor. And what is the use of the labor? Somebody has to put the food grains into bags. Somebody has to stitch the bags. Somebody has to put the bags into the warehouse or into the truck, etc. So the first reason why procurement in Punjab has been affected, please be focused now. Why I am discussing this? A lot of discussion that has happened in recent times is only about procurement. But what is the problem with the procurement? They are not discussing that completely. You have the complete picture now. Point number one, the wages which are paid to the workers who are hired by FCI, the workers are demanding higher wages. Simple, the workers are demanding higher amount of wages. And FCI is not willing to pay that amount of money which is being demanded by the wage earners, and that has led to protest and it has disrupted procurement. Is the first point clear here? First issue. Second issue, why there is a problem with the procurement? Second one is, I said commission agents. Commission agents will help farmers sell the food grains to Food Corporation of India. The commission agents were paid an amount of around 46 rupees per quintal. Around 46 rupees. But now commission agents are demanding more than 46 rupees, that is approximately 2.5% of the money that is earned. Approximately 2.5%. So obviously, because of the higher demand which has been demanded by the commission agents, even the procurement has been stopped. Procurement has been disrupted. Is the second cause clear to all of you? So first one is labor. They are demanding higher wages. Second one is commission agents. They are also demanding higher commission. From 46 rupees, now they want it to be increased to 2.5% of the money or the prices paid. Third, the millers, the private sector millers who are part of the supply chain here, they are concerned. What is their concern? Listen to me very carefully now. Food Corporation of India, as such, there is one concern associated with the operations, that is shortage of warehousing capacity. Is it okay? There is a shortage of warehousing capacity. That is always a concern in India. And that's the reason Government of India has been promoting, development of warehousing even under the PPP model, public-private partnership. It is promoting warehousing at village level as well now. So the problem is there is a shortage of warehousing. Now generally what would happen is the FCI procures, uses these food grains, basically all the procurement done by the center like this along with the states which have procured and transferred. We will call this as a central pool. Is it okay? We will call this as a central pool. Now the food grains in the central pool are taken and transported to other states, because there are many other states where the production is lesser, but for distribution purposes they need higher quantity of food grains. So these are called as the deficit states. So from the central pool the food grains are supposed to be moved. Now listen to me. What if I say FCI has procured food grain but it has not been able to move food grains into other states, which means, all of you will agree, the warehousing space which is already smaller, there's a shortfall, the warehousing space now will not be sufficient even if FCI will go ahead and procure the food grains. Correct? All of you able to understand? Just to make you understand this much more clearly. Last year during the same time period, and this time period is very critical. Reason being, the farmers start cultivating for the next cycle now. They'll start sowing the seeds for the next cycle. So during the same period, the harvesting plus procurement season, 50% of what was purchased by the FCI was moved out of the godowns which are present in the mandis. It had already moved out. But according to the latest data, now hardly around, right, 10% of the total food grains which have been procured by FCI have been moved out of the godowns where the procurement and storage has happened. Which means very less food grains are moved, which also means storage capacity is lesser. So FCI has slowed down, I repeat, FCI has slowed down its procurement in Punjab. That's a fact, by the way. Although Government of India says every grain of a food grain will be procured by the FCI, timing is essential. I hope you understand this. Timing is essential. Because if the farmer, understand the problem here, if the farmer knows that FCI has slowed down its procurement, it is not procuring now. Let's say farmer will not harvest the crop. And as such, various data sets have shown that procurement, because it is slower, it has been stopped in many places. The harvesting also has been down. Farmers are not ready to harvest the crop because there is no procurement or very less procurement. And if the farmers don't cut the crop is standing. Don't you think if you leave the crop behind or beyond the harvesting season, the quality and quantity of the food grain will suffer. It will fall down. And the problem is not yet over. Problem will be compounded now. Why? The farmer has to create space for the next cycle of cultivation. Land has to be there for the next cycle of cultivation. If they don't harvest now, land will not be prepared. So the next cycle of cultivation is going to be affected. Many experts have already warned next cycle the production in the states would be affected. And this comes at a particular juncture where the monsoon that we have received is very good monsoon. We are expected to have very high production throughout India thanks to the monsoon rainfall. Now there is a concern that the production would be affected in the next cycle. Is the point clear to all of you? And some of you will simply say, sir, they will cut the crop very soon if the procurement happens. That will lead to another problem. All of you heard of stubble burning? Correct? All of you heard of stubble burning? Farmer will simply say, because the government is procuring, I'll cut the crop very fast, supply. For the next cycle, the time is already now. We have to start, right, sowing the seeds now. So rather than slowly and steadily, right, clearing the field, I'll burn the stubble. I'll simply burn the stubble, clear the field, and that will cause a lot of pollution. So come back to the discussion here. The millers are saying, the private companies, private millers are saying, if the FCI doesn't have sufficient storage capacity, they are not moving sufficient food grains out of, let's say, warehouses, they will procure, they will give the, right, let's say, paddy to me. Now, I will clean the paddy, I will dehusk it, I will polish it, and FCI will tell me to keep the rice with myself. For a certain time period, FCI might ask me to store food grains. I don't want to do all of it. That is a cause of concern for the private sector millers. And that is also the reason why they are not ready to accept food grains from FCI. Is this problem okay with all of you? They are also not ready to accept food grains. So that is essentially the paddy. Paddy is nothing but a grain with coating, without any polishing, with coating. You will remove the husk, you will polish it, and then you will get the actual grain of rice. Done? So third issue is the worry of the millers. And the fourth problem is, in many cases, the procurement has not been done from the farmers. The food grains have been rejected. Paddy has been rejected. Sir, why? Why are they rejecting the paddy? The argument that has been put forward for rejection is the moisture content in paddy is higher. They are simply saying that moisture content in paddy is higher. Generally, the moisture content is expected to be below 17% like this, but in many of these cases, the content of moisture is above 20%. And it's not that they have not procured the paddy with higher moisture earlier. They have procured it. But the problem now is, many experts are saying the rejection is happening because there is a term called as, please remember this, OTR. There is something called as OTR. Suddenly this can be asked in the prelims now. OTR stands for out-turn ratio. Out-turn ratio. What is an out-turn ratio? FCI will procure paddy, give it to a miller. Miller has to remove the husk, polish, and give it back. So for every 100 kg that has been given in the form of paddy, for every 100 kg that is given in the form of paddy, the millers under the agreement with FCI will have to provide back, give back 67% of that in the form of food grains. That is 67 kg has to be given back. Now, because the moisture content might be higher, you will not get 67% of the paddy in the form of output. So many of the millers are saying, no, we will not procure it. We will not use this food grain because the moisture content is very, very high. So these are the four very important reasons. Is the point clear to all of you? These are the four very important clear points why the paddy procurement has been very slow. Paddy procurement in multiple places has been stopped in Punjab. And against this, the farmers and the farmer unions are protesting. They are protesting against these kind of practices. According to Government of India's data, please have a look at this. The Food Corporation of India and the state agencies put together have so far procured 120.67 lakh metric tons. According to various estimates, this year the production will be around 180. The procurement will be around 180. Production might be in the range of 200 to 220 LMT. 6.58 lakh farmers have been benefited because the MSP has been paid, and the center has a targeted procurement of around 185 LMT for this paddy till 30th November. But according to the various agencies, procurement is very, very less, just a fraction of what it was done last year during the same period. For example, one data set which has been provided is that last year during the same time period, the procurement was somewhere around 49 LMTs, lakh metric tons. The procurement was somewhere around 49 LMTs. Now, according to the latest data, it is somewhere around 37.6 LMTs, which basically shows that the procurement has been much lower timing. That is, there has been a delay in the procurement by the agencies. And what is the impact of it? Like I told you earlier, the farmers are not harvesting the standing crop. It is expected to lead to reduction in the quality as well as the quantity of the food grains. Second, the next cycle of the cultivation would be affected because there will be a delay now. Third one, farmers are worried whether they'll be able to earn better returns or not. This will again have a direct impact on what will be the cultivation in the next cycle in the state of Punjab. And finally, the farmers might simply turn on and start burning the stubble after selling the crop to the government. This will lead to more pollution, and you must have seen this. When there's a stubble burning done in Punjab and Haryana, it will basically choke the Delhi. It will basically create a lot of pollution in Delhi. So these are certain points related to what will be the impact of the delayed procurement of paddy in the state of Punjab. Everybody is okay? Please do let me know in the chat section. Everybody is okay with whatever we have discussed so far regarding why there is a delay in paddy procurement. Let me add one more current affairs point associated with this. That is, the government of India very recently has approved equity infusion in Food Corporation of India. The Cabinet Committee has basically approved equity infusion in the Food Corporation of India. Now, what is this equity infusion? Point number one, please go back in the history. 1960s is very well known for promotion of agriculture reforms in India. What kind of agriculture reforms? The two very important initiatives of Government of India during this period of time, both associated with 1965, are one. In 1964, we passed Food Corporation of India Act. In 1964, FCI Act was passed, and in 1965, FCI, Food Corporation of India, was established. Okay, FCI was established. And the second very important reform, again in the same year, 1965, is Government of India established. It set up Agriculture Prices Commission. Now, many of you will simply say, sir, what is this Agriculture Prices Commission? I've never heard of it. My dear, all of you, please do let me know. Have you heard of Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices? Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, CACP. It is basically functioning under Ministry of Agriculture. CACP will recommend what should be the MSP for more than 20 crops to the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. It is the CACP which will recommend MSP to the government. So in 1965, this was earlier referred to as Agriculture Prices Commission. In 1985, it was renamed as Commission for Agriculture Cost and Price. Now let me focus on this point here, Food Corporation of India. Why is the FCS so relevant? Why is it important? How can you connect it to what is given in the article? Food Corporation of India is a statutory corporation, which means the government has passed a bill, convert that into an act. Under the provisions of the act, government has set up an authority. That is a statutory corporation. 100% of FCI is owned by Government of India. And FCI is very much relevant, very much a participant in agriculture sector, that is basically procuring, storing and distribution of the food grains is undertaken by FCI. Then this is a very important point. And not just procuring and storing and distribution, there is also a concept of buffer stock. The Food Corporation of India is also involved in procuring and maintaining the buffer stocks in India. And in recent times, to control the food inflation that has been causing havoc, that has been causing a headache for Reserve Bank of India, the buffer stocks have been utilized by the government to cool down the market prices of these food grains itself. So FCI procures, maintains a buffer stock as well for wheat, for paddy. Now, when it was established back in 1965, the capital that was invested, equity capital, equity means ownership capital, was around 4 CR. Over a period of time, the capital within FCI, through government investment of course, has been increasing. It has kept on increasing. And the last time when the capital was increased, equity capital was increased, was in 2024 itself. That is in this year, in the beginning, that is in the month of February, Government of India announced that the equity capital in Food Corporation of India will be increased from 10,000 CR to 21,000 CR. Is the point clear? The equity capital in the FCI will be increased from 10,000 CR to 21,000 CR. And now Government of India says that 10.7 thousand crore, that is 10,700 crore rupees, infusion will be further done in the Food Corporation of India. 10,700 crore more rupees will be infused in the Food Corporation of India. What is the importance of this? What is the use of this piece of information for you? Like I said earlier, FCI is involved in the procurement of the food grain, storage, distribution of the food grain, which means the Food Corporation of India, when they procure, they will have to pay money to the farmers. When they will store the food grain, they need to have warehouses. Like I said, warehousing capacity with FCI is lesser than what is actually required. So what does FCI do? FCI will also lease out. It will lease out various private godowns or warehouses for warehousing of these food grains. So please look at the problem here. FCI needs huge amount of money. Government of India in the budget will announce a food subsidy bill. But the Government of India immediately doesn't allocate the funds. Is the point clear? Government will announce a food subsidy, but immediately the food subsidy amount is not allocated. At least in recent times, they have started allocating 60%, 70%, right? Let's say in a very soon manner, that is in a very quick manner. Earlier, the government used to announce it, and after 6 months, after 8 months, after 10 months, the money was actually given to Food Corporation of India. And this kind of a practice, this kind of a financing practice actually forced Food Corporation of India to go to the market, borrow money. And because the FCI has to procure food grains. FCI cannot tell the farmer, I have not received money from the government, so you wait. Once they give me money, I'll come and procure the food grain from you. No, it doesn't work out that way. So FCI used to borrow from the market, and when the government used to pay money, they used this money to pay back, right, the loan, to pay interest, etc. Now just think of this. If government will announce infusion of capital of 10,700 crore rupees, don't you think the interest burden on FCI will come down? Because FCI may not be needing to borrow more and more money from the market now. 10,700 crore rupee infusion is there. They have received this money. So the availability of working capital, remember this, availability of working capital for FCI will increase. They will have more money now. They can use it to develop infrastructure such as warehousing capacity. So warehousing infrastructure can be promoted now. Point number 2, right? If they reduce their borrowing, from the market, interest payment will also go down. The liability to pay interest, if it goes down, they'll be able to save the amount of interest now. Interest savings, more working capital availability, more infrastructure investment, lesser reliability on government borrowings. These are some of the very important outcomes that you can use or you can write associated with this newspaper article, which says the Cabinet Committee has approved infusing 10,700 crore rupee capital into Food Corporation of India. Everybody is okay with this? Please do let me know in the chat section. Okay, so right, these two are very, very important. These are there in the current affairs. Now, let's solve a question associated with this. One MCQ is there and one descriptive question is also there. Right, please look at the MCQ. Take 60 seconds, solve it. I'll discuss what is the right option after 60 seconds. Somebody says A, somebody has written D, somebody has written B. Only left out option is option C now. If one of you say C, we have completed the whole spectrum of all the four options A, B, C and D. Okay, let's start. The procurement of the food grains is conducted by the Ministry of Agriculture. Many of you will be tempted to say it is correct. Why? Sir, food grain. Sir, agriculture. Minister of Agriculture. Makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Absolutely no. The procurement operations are not done by the Ministry of Agriculture. Rather, it is done by Ministry of Public, right? Ministry of Consumer Affairs. Ministry of Consumer Affairs. Okay, Ministry of Public Distribution and Consumer Affairs. So first statement wrong. It is not Ministry of Agriculture. I was about to say Ministry of Public Administration, not Public Administration, Ministry of Consumer Affairs. Second, the central pool contains only the food grains procured by the state. Underline the term only the food grains procured by the state. Absolutely no. The central pool will contain food grains which are procured by FCI and also by the state government agencies which are given to FCI. That is central pool. Third, the state government under the decentralized procurement is not allowed to procure over the allocation. This is also wrong. If a state government is allowed to, let's say, distribute 100 kgs, they are allowed to procure more than 100 kgs. They are allowed. But the excess or the surplus food grains, now they will simply transfer it to Food Corporation of India under the decentralized procurement. So third statement is also wrong. All the three are incorrect. Right option for this question is option D, none of the above or none of them. Those who have given the D as a right option, congrats, you are absolutely right. Now, a descriptive question as well. Evaluate the impact of procurement of food grains under MSP. What are the challenges faced in the recent paddy procurement? Can you write what is the impact of procurement of food grains under MSP? For example, many of you will ask me, sir, how do you write an effective answer for this? How do I write an effective answer? Start with an introduction and do not write a very lengthy introduction. Keep it very simple. Keep it very short to the point. Sir, what should be the introduction? The government of India announces MSP and procures mainly paddy and wheat by paying MSP to the farmers. That's it. Introduction. Come to the main body. What are the benefits of the procurement? The farmers are guaranteed certain amount of money now. The farmers are not thrown at the mercy of the market prices because the market prices could be higher, could be lesser than the MSP. So the farmers will have guaranteed returns. Farmers, will not be at the mercy of the market. Government can use this procurement to promote production of certain crops, etc., etc. right? So these are some of the benefits or the impact of procurement. In addition to this, you can also say government will procure the food grains for distribution purposes such as welfare measures, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, midday meals, etc. That is also essentially the impact. After that, what are the recent challenges faced, right, in procurement of the paddy? We have discussed. You can mention 3 to 4 points. Easily, you will be able to write a very good answer for 250 words. Done? Right? So, this is how you model your answer. Right? You model your answer. Okay. Now, next article. Lapata ladies of Indian economy. Lapata ladies of Indian economy. Don't worry. I am not going to show you the Lapata ladies movie. No. I am not going to discuss the story of Lapata ladies movie also. Absolutely no. I am economics faculty. I'll stick to economics. Now, what is the discussion here? Like I mentioned in the introduction, there are two reports which have been published very recently. Okay, there are two reports which have been published very recently. One report is published by Bain and Company and Magic Bus India Foundation. The title of the report is From Aspiration to Action, Building India's 400 Million Women Workforce. What does it say? I'll tell you. Have patience. Second report, ILO, International Labour Organization. It has published one more report, The Impact of Care Responsibilities of Women's Labour Participation. Let's decode what the two reports are saying. Let's decode both of them, and later how do you use this information? In what context you will use the information? Let's understand it. Let's start. The first report which has been published talks about women's participation in the market. There is something called as female labor force participation rate. Have you heard of this? Female labor force participation rate. That is FLFPR. Female labor force participation rate. What does the labor force participation rate measure? It basically measures out of 100 women, how many of the women are willing to work. Right? In percentage, generally it is calculated. Out of 100 women, how many women are willing to work? That is female labor force participation rate. According to this report, again I am citing according to this report, the female labor force participation rate in case of India is somewhere around 35% to 37 to 38%. From one year to another year, it will keep on fluctuating. I hope you understand. From one year to another year, the number will keep on fluctuating, but not by a very large extent. From 35% in one year to another year, it will not jump to 50%. It will not jump to 70%. No, it doesn't jump so much. Small, let's say 2 to 3% variation would be there. But I hope you understand the impact of this. What is the impact? The government of India, like I said earlier, basically has a target of achieving how much? Around $30 trillion GDP for Indian economy by 2047. 100 years of independence. According to this report, if you basically look at the trend, right? If you extrapolate the trend, around 45% of it, around 45% of this has to come from female labor force. Is the point clear? Around 45% of this $30 trillion GDP has to come from female labor force, which means around $14 trillion. Around $14 trillion out of 30 trillion has to come from the female labor force. They will have to contribute around $14 trillion. But the same survey also says that if you look at the female labor force participation rate, and if you extrapolate, if you basically look at the trend, by 2047, we will have, right, we will have somewhere around 250 million women labor force. Around 250 million labor force. But if you want to achieve $14 trillion from the women participation, if you want to have $14 trillion in the form of GDP, you are supposed to have 400 million labor force, that is specifically from female labor force only. Is the point clear? If you want to achieve $14 trillion, you will have to have 400 million women in a form of female labor force participation rate. And if you look at the female labor force participation today and extend it by 2047, we are expected to have somewhere around 250 million plus. 250 million plus. And the report basically says we should have 400 million. We will end up having 250 million plus, which gives us a shortage of around 145 million female labor force. That is, the report says this 145 million female labor force is the Lapata ladies. It is this shortage which will prevent India from achieving, right, let's say $30 trillion worth of economy by 2047. They're basically talking about this. They're basically talking about this. So everybody is able to understand the first report. Everybody is able to understand. Now, why it is going to happen? What is the solution? I'll tell you. Don't worry, I'll tell you about that as well. Second report talks about care economy. Second report talks about care economy. Now, in everybody's household, for example, in your own household right now, you are sitting listening to this lecture, correct? And by the way, since you started from the last 1 hour, at least 2 times or 3 times, your mother would have walked into your room, asked you, you want to have a tea? You want to have a cup of coffee? When will you have your dinner? Right? Why are you not eating? Anyways, you have put on your headphones. Both of your hands are free. Faculty has already said they will give you handouts. So why not eat? Eat now. Your mother will basically bring food and give it to you. My dear, very simple question to all of you, and be honest by the way. Will you pay money for the services that you are receiving from your mother now? Do let me know in the chat section. Will you receive, right, when you receive the services, will you pay money to your mother? Try doing that. They will give you a very long bill, right? No mahine se, right? So they'll start from 9th month only. So argument is simple. There's a concept of household work. Care economy is part of it. There's a concept of household work. The household work mainly is contributed by women. It's not that men don't contribute. I know somebody in the audience will get offended now. I am not saying you don't contribute. But according to the reports, according to the surveys which have been conducted, listen to me carefully. In a household, there will be 2 classifications. The women who have jobs, the women who don't have jobs. Men who have jobs and the men who don't have jobs. According to the survey which has been conducted, the women who do not have jobs, they will generally put in at least 7 hours of work in a household. Those women who do not have a job. And those women who have a job, nothing great, right? They also put in huge amount. And when I say nothing great, I'm talking in terms of number of hours, right? So basically, they also put in around 5.8 hours. So have a look at this. They are supposed to work in the office, come back, they are supposed to work in the household as well. Again, I'm not saying this should be promoted, but I'm saying this is a fact. This is a problem. Now, coming to the other section of the society, because some of you will be waiting. Sir, what about men? Don't keep me waiting. Tell me, do we contribute? Right? I'm also a man. Am I contributing? You know the answer to that. But according to the survey, the men who are jobless, right, basically contribute around 4+ hours of work per day. And the men who have a job, basically they will contribute around 2.7 hours of work per day in the household. So there is no comparison here. The amount of work that is put in by women in household work, for which they are not getting paid, mind you, they are not getting paid. The amount of hours of work they have put in is very, very huge. Very huge. Right? In some cases, it is twice the amount of work put in by men. Some cases, 3 times the amount of work put in by men. And what is the issue here? The issue is, in recent times, many of the experts, many of the researchers are saying we need to find one or the other solution how we can find a value for all of this work, because it's a work, right? Let's not make any mistake here. It's work, right? If you do that work outside, you generate revenue, you generate money, you earn money for that. But the same 7 hours of work, if you put in a household, no money is generated. So in the national accounting system, can we have a methodology where we will account for all of it? In fact, United Nations, all of you heard of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, Sustainable Development Goal. There is one particular target, 5, that is a goal number 5, specifically target 5.4, which argues that we should have a methodology. All of us, we should have methodology to basically calculate that this kind of a unpaid work that is put in by people in the household. All of this is unpaid work. We should have a methodology to calculate the value of it. We should start including it, etc. Now, according to various surveys, in the context of India alone, this kind of unpaid work accounts for around 7.5% of GDP. Mind you, it accounts for around 7.5% of GDP. And India's GDP is, more than $3 trillion now. So that is the value of unpaid work that is generated in India. And this report published by ILO focuses on this idea itself. That is, the report says that in large number of households in India, the women are not able to participate in the labor market because they will have to end up providing care for the people in the household. What kind of care? Care provided for children, care provided for elderly parents. So because of this care economy, 53%, mind you, look at the report, 53% of women in India are outside the labor force. They are outside the labor force. They are not even able to participate within the labor force. Now, let me club both of these and basically try to give you what are the issues here. What are the problems? Why is that such a huge amount of female labor force not able to participate? Why are they not able to contribute? Reason is, one, the reports, I am clubbing both of the reports and discussing now. One, women generally prefer certain specific type of jobs when they have to take care of household also. They would prefer certain types of jobs. It could be temporary or let's say part-time jobs. They would prefer flexibility in the number of hours, timing also, etc. These kind of specialized jobs generally are not available for women. Second, why are the women asked to take care of the economic, that is basically the care activities in the household? Why women? What about men? Men, according to the ILO, hardly around 1% of the men stay away from the labor force because of the care they are providing. Just around 1%, whereas for women, it is more than 50%. India is not the only country, but there are very few other countries which has such a huge amount of, let's say, number of women who are forced to stay away from the labor market because of their care activities. So point number one, they want specialized jobs. They are not available, hence they'll be forced to stay away. Point number two, listen to me. Point number two, there is always a problem in terms of skilling as well as the kind of jobs available in the market. There might be a gap in the skill set. A woman might have certain skill set, but the kind of jobs which are available in that region, in that particular part of the region or let's say city, the jobs require a different skill set. The skill gap can also become a problem. Third number, which the ILO says, the women are relegated to take care of the household because in terms of graduation, in terms of, let's say, education, generally between husband and wife, it has been seen, wife has a lesser educational level compared to a man or the husband. And again, I am not proposing this, before you jump into the chat section and start criticizing me, I am not saying this. ILO's report is saying this. right? So these are essentially, right, some of the reasons why women are not able to participate. There will be a huge gap between what is actually demanded to promote growth in the economy compared to supply of female labor force, and that will hinder the target of $30 trillion by 2047, which has been set up by the government of India. Done, right? So all of you are able to understand this. These two reports, use it. Now many of you will be of confusion. Sir, where do I use it? You can use these reports in writing social issues answer. You can use this report in writing inclusive growth answer. You can use this report whenever there's a talk of women empowerment, etc., etc. Done? Okay. Now, associated with this, there is an MCQ given here. Right? Take 60 seconds. Try to solve this. It's a very easy question. You should be able to solve this very, very quickly now. Okay? In fact, take 30 seconds because I've discussed the statements already. Start. Here also some of you are making mistake. Fun Entertainment Info. That is a username, by the way. The option that you have chosen is Q. What is the option Q here? Where is the option Q? Either it has to be A, B, C or D. How can you have an option Q? Okay, let me solve. Consider the following statements. The care economy, paid or unpaid, is counted as a part of GDP. Of course, no. Right? When the care economy is unpaid, I give you the example. Right? In your own household, care economy is there already. Right? It doesn't generate revenue. It is uncounted. It is not counted as a part of GDP. So, first statement, wrong. The SDG aims to recognize the value of unpaid work done by women. It aims to recognize? Yes. It aims to recognize the value of unpaid work done by women. In fact, I told you target 5.4. Correct? Target 5.4. So, right option for the question will be option B. Only 2 is correct. Only 2 is correct. That is, second statement is correct. Right option is option B. Many of you have chosen option A. Why? Okay. A descriptive question as well. India, to truly achieve inclusive growth, will have to bring in its missing women into workforce. Elaborate the statement in 250 words, 15 marker. You can use the data to basically prove that there is a huge divergence in the demand as well as supply of female labor force. You can also hammer the point saying that government is taking so many measures, right, to promote women's participation in the labor market. You can also give certain examples such as a drone didi, lakpati didi, etc., etc. You can also say, according to the income inequality report, only around 18% of the income earned is generated by women in India, which needs to be much higher, which needs to be increased. That will help us in promoting gender equity, promoting women empowerment, and this will automatically lead to inclusive growth in India. Done? Okay. Right, everybody is okay with the article which is covering 2 different reports. Let me go to the next article. Reserve Bank of India has increased domestically held gold. RBI has increased domestically held gold. Now, what do you mean by domestically held gold? Point number 1, all of you have heard of forex reserves. What is the meaning of forex reserves? RBI, according to the RBI Act, RBI is the custodian. RBI is the manager of forex reserves. RBI will maintain forex reserves in basically 4 components. One of the component is gold. One of the important component of forex reserves is gold. Now, according to the latest report published by Reserve Bank of India, the amount of gold which is held by Reserve Bank of India is more than 800 metric tons. More than 800 metric tons. But listen to the next point very carefully. all the 800 metric tons which is owned by Reserve Bank of India, it is not held means kept within India. A large chunk of it is stored outside India. Is it okay? A large chunk of it is stored outside India. And remaining part of this is held in the domestic market. In the domestic market. And in the last 2 to 3 years, Reserve Bank of India has kept on bringing the gold which is kept outside India into the domestic market. According to the data published by RBI, more than 130 metric ton has been brought in by RBI into India, and we are storing this in India. Some of you will be thinking, sir, why does RBI store gold outside India? What is the logic behind it? They should not store. We should become Atmanirbhar. We should become self-reliant. Store the gold within India, not outside India. Listen to the story now. And again, this has connection to Civil Services Exam. 1991, India faced BOP crisis. Correct? The India faced BOP crisis back in the year 1991. And at that point of time, India wanted to borrow certain amount of dollars using which we wanted to address the issue of BOP crisis. In a nutshell, BOP crisis means a country doesn't have sufficient dollars to pay for other activities such as imports, such as a loan repayment, etc. That is the concept of a BOP crisis. So in 1991, India faced a BOP crisis. We wanted to borrow. And when we wanted to borrow, we were supposed to provide certain collateral. And it was at this point of time, around 47 tons of gold was exported from India, was lifted from India, taken to Bank of England, kept as a security in the Bank of England, using which we borrowed from multiple sources, including International Monetary Fund. But over a period of time, we have repaid all these loans. For example, the loan that we have taken from IMF, we have repaid that loan even before 2000. But the gold which we transported, kept in Bank of England, it has been kept in the Bank of England itself. Reason being, Reserve Bank of India simply said, why do we need to transport that back into India? Because if I transport it, charges will be, right, or expenditure will be incurred by me. And if I bring it back into India, I need warehousing capacity for it. I need storage capacity for it. A vault has to be there. But I don't have so much of space. Let's keep the gold in Bank of England itself. And this is not the story only for India, by the way. Around the world, the central banks keep purchasing gold. And when they purchase gold outside their respective country, it makes more sense for them to store it in these kinds of central banks. Best example, Bank of England. The Bank of England has one of the largest gold storage in the world, only after the Federal Reserve Vault in the New York. So basically, multiple countries, just like India, have kept gold outside India. So we have domestically held gold, and we also have foreign stored gold or gold stored externally. And in recent times, RBI, other central banks have started purchasing more and more gold. And there is a reason for it, which I'll explain. So what has RBI done now? In the last couple of years, the gold which is stored in the Central Bank of England, right? Basically, they have started moving this gold back into India, which has actually increased the domestically held gold reserves. If you look at the graph here, you will realize that the domestically held gold reserves have kept on increasing. Right? Is it okay? Domestically held gold reserves have kept on increasing, and internationally held gold reserves have declined. Now, what are the reasons? Why is RBI shifting gold into the domestic market now? And what are the implications? Point number one, RBI says, now we have built a lot of vault space. That is, storage space is available with me. So why to store gold outside in other central banks? let me bring the gold back, store it in India. This will help us save the amount of charges that we will pay to the Bank of England because they are storing gold. Because they are storing gold, I am paying money. And point number 2, understand this, Reserve Bank of India, like any other central bank, I told you, has kept on purchasing more and more gold, not only in the domestic market, but also in the international market. Even in the international market, we have kept on purchasing gold. For example, there is a term, remember this, London Good Delivery, LGD, London Good Delivery. What is this London Good Delivery? Essentially, London Good Delivery, it's a bar. Bar means a piece of gold or a piece of silver as well. So, London Good Delivery basically represents a bar of, let's say, gold, which is approximately weighing around 12.5 kgs. Approximately weighing around 12.5 kgs. And the Reserve Bank of India has kept on purchasing this London Gold Delivery from the external market, and they have stored this in the central bank, in the, let's say, Bank of England. So the accumulation of gold has kept on increasing. One of the reason behind that is inflation rate has been higher. Inflation rate has been higher. And whenever the inflation rate is higher, central banks generally prefer to hold the money in the form of gold rather than keeping it in the form of money itself. And the reason behind that is very simple. The logic behind that is, all of you please think of this. If I basically show you, let's say, 50 rupees, right? Imagine this. Imagine you're the central bank governor now. If you have this particular 50 rupee cash, can everybody say this? It's a 50 rupee cash, by the way. If you have 50 rupee cash like this, if you keep it in the form of a cash, because of inflation, the purchasing power of the cash will keep on decreasing. But rather, you will use the 50 rupees, purchase gold. Gold is precious. The supply of gold is limited. And whenever inflation is there, people, banks, etc. will start purchasing more of a gold. Prices will start increasing. So the assets that the central banker will invest rather than keeping the money in the form of cash is gold. So demand for the gold in recent times has increased. Even RBI has purchased gold within India as well as outside India. The gold that was stored in the form of LGD bricks or LGD gold bar. Third very important reason here is that Reserve Bank of India is worried that just like Western countries imposing sanctions on Russia, they might simply impose sanctions even on India in the future. And if they impose sanctions, the assets of Government of India, and RBI is owned by Government of India, assets of Government of India will be frozen outside India. So these gold bars which are kept outside India, these assets might be frozen, not accessible in the future if at all Western countries impose sanctions. So these are some of the reasons citing which Reserve Bank of India has shifted gold bars into India. As a result of this, the domestically held gold has increased. So done? Everybody is okay? Are you able to understand this? Simple 4 points. In most of the newspapers, they have simply discussed gold bar has been increased. But why? Inflation. Worry about sanctions. RBI has built a lot of world space now, right? And RBI simply says, rather than paying charges to Bank of England, I will transport it, I will store it in India. So these are the 4 reasons why the physically held gold in India or domestically held gold has increased. India has brought in the gold now. So let's answer to this question, because I've already answered the concept of London Good Delivery. Let me basically tell you what is the right option now. The London Good Delivery bar recently appearing in the news refers to method followed by the London Bank to deliver the goods to other countries? No. It is gold bars which meets the specifications of London Bar Metals Association. That is basically specifications. 24 carat. The weight has to be this much, right, etc. So according to LBMA specifications, this is meeting the specification which is called as London Good Delivery. Right option is option B. Right option is Option B for this particular question. Everybody is okay? Please do let me know in the chat section now. Everybody is okay? All of you able to follow the discussion? Next article that I'll be discussing is the issue of DAP shortage. Even in today's newspaper, there is an article regarding the DAP shortage. Let's basically understand what is happening here. What is the problem? What is the issue? Please understand, the agriculture community in India, farmers in a nutshell, use multiple types of fertilizers. We have nitrogenous based fertilizer, that is urea. We have a muriate of potash, that will take care of potassium. You also have diammonium phosphate, DAP, diammonium phosphate. In case of diammonium phosphate, the phosphorus has the highest content. It has the highest content. 46% is the phosphorus. But in recent times, especially in the ongoing cycle of cultivation, we are seeing that the availability of a diammonium phosphate has become very, very less. There is a huge shortage of DAP, which the farmers are worried. Because the DAP, like I said, has phosphorus. It has a phosphorus, how much? It has 46% in the form of phosphorus. In addition to this, 18% of DAP is nitrogen as well. 18% of DAP is nitrogen as well. But now the problem is, if the DAP is not available, farmers are saying for them sowing of the seeds is difficult. To sow the seeds, when you sow the seeds, you will apply DAP and sow the seeds, which will help in better production, better productivity of the crop. But because there is a shortage of DAP, this has become a problem now. And what has happened because of the shortage? Right, in various places it has been seen that police force has been utilized to distribute DAP. Look at the situation. To distribute diammonium phosphate, we are using police force now. Why? Farmers are agitating. Farmers are basically trying to purchase a lot of let's say DAP. Lot of commotion is happening. Lot of disturbance. So we are using police force. In certain other districts and villages, it has been seen that because the private companies or let's say privately owned shops have realized that there's a shortage of DAP, they are selling the DAP above the market price, above what they are supposed to charge. That is, in a nutshell, there is a black marketing of DAP now. And lot of the farmers, because they will not be able to purchase a DAP from the shop by paying the MRP, now they'll be forced to purchase a DAP at a much higher price. And not all the farmers will be able to afford higher prices. Even if the farmers pay the money, the amount that they will spend will be much bigger. The quantity they can purchase will become lesser. So there are certain problems in terms of availability of DAP. But what is the problem? What has happened? The issue has arisen because, listen to me very carefully, in the international market, the prices of DAP has actually increased. In the international market, the price of DAP has increased. Government of India for the last 3 years has directed the fertilizer companies not to increase MRP. Listen to the story very carefully here. Government has asked the sellers, that is the sellers of fertilizers, that is DAP, for the last 3 years, it has directed them not to increase the MRP. Sell the DAP at the same market price. But the problem is here, if the market price because of the import has to increase, government is telling me not to increase the market price, it means that government will have to provide larger amount of subsidy. Correct? It has to provide higher amount of subsidy, and government has done this. Government under the nutrient based subsidy, please remember this, NBS, nutrient based subsidy, which was introduced from the year 2010, basically is providing subsidy for diammonium phosphate and muriate of potash. But the benefit of the NBS, what was the objective of NBS? Government will allow right? Government will basically allow the companies who are selling to determine the market prices. But now, the government knows if the private sector will increase the market price, the sellers will increase the market price, farmers will suffer. So, government has asked companies not to increase the market price, keep the market price same, but they have increased the subsidy. This is point number one. Point number two, I said the import prices, because the DAP prices in the international market has gone up, the import prices also has gone up. Now look at this. If I am an importer, I will import DAP, I will transport it, I will warehouse it, I will sell it. Which means apart from paying money for the import, I will also incur other expenses. Is it okay? Apart from paying money for the import, I will incur other expenses. Now, on the other side, Government of India is not allowing me to increase the market price. It has increased the subsidy. It has increased the subsidy, but it is not allowing me to increase the market price. But the problem here is, even with the subsidy that the government is providing, plus the market price at which I am selling, this amount is much smaller compared to the value of import for which I am paying money plus expenses. All of you able to understand this? Just to put in a number form, the cost of import plus other expenses will be more than 60,000 rupees. Whereas the amount of subsidy given by the government plus the market price which I will get by selling the fertilizer in the market will be way below 60,000 rupees. Which effectively means for me, it doesn't make any sense to import and sell the fertilizer. So imports have been disrupted. Imports have been disrupted. That's a fact, by the way. And not only this, even the imports that are being done, there is a delay in the imports now. There is a delay in the imports. In the range of 14 to 45 days, there is a delay of imports of DAP fertilizer. And that is because of what is happening in the Red Sea. What is happening in the Red Sea? Because of that, now the ships are supposed to take a longer route, travel for a longer distance, and the cost of import will increase. Time for the import will also increase. This has led to furthermore shortage of diammonium phosphate in the market. And according to various surveys, the data shows that in the last 10 years, the demand for the DAP has fluctuated, production also has fluctuated, but much more worrisome is no new capacity. Remember this, no new capacity under DAP has been added so far in the last 1 decade. Which means, how much is the production? We have not added production capacity in the last 1 decade. We have not increased the production capacity. In fact, various data sets show that in this year, the production of DAP, production of diammonium phosphate, has actually come down by 7%. So put together all of these factors now. Please put together all of these particular factors. Cost of imports is much higher compared to how much you can generate. So you are worried about imports. Even if you are importing, it is taking a longer distance now. Time taken will be higher, cost will be higher. Shortage. Third point, right? Government basically says, we will supply fertilizer. But for that, as the demand increases, more production has to happen. No capacity addition has taken place in the last 1 decade, right? Which means, right, production capacity in the domestic market is, right, has not increased. In fact, understand this. Whatever capacity we have, according to experts, we are producing somewhere around 70% of that as of now. Is it okay? Right? Whatever capacity we have, we are producing 70% of the capacity, which means, imagine we have machineries. Using the machinery, you can produce 100 units. But you are not producing 100 units. You are producing simply 70 units. This is called as underutilization. Underutilization. Right now, in case of DAP, it is said that 70% of the capacity is being utilized. right? 70% of the capacity is being utilized, and that's the reason production in the domestic market actually has gone down. So demand is there, supply production has gone down. So don't you think there will be scarcity which will be created? This has led to rising market prices of fertilizers which are being sold to the farmers through black marketing channels, right? And this has led to a lot of unrest in multiple places in India where there is less or no supply of DAP as of now. Done? And I hope you know this. It's a cultivation cycle. Right now, the farmers are supposed to sow the seeds. They are supposed to purchase the fertilizer. And one of them is a DAP. So what is the solution then? The experts are basically asking the farmers to use a substitute. Use something else in place of a diammonium phosphate. For example, NPK complex fertilizer. NPK complex fertilizer. It is a very much closer substitute, closer product compared to DAP, but please understand, in DAP, phosphorus content is very, very high compared to phosphorus content within NPK. Done? Right? So, these are certain points regarding the issue of a DAP shortage in recent times in India. I'll give you an MCQ. Take 60 seconds and answer. Right? Answer to this particular question. Start. Read the statements carefully. Do not be in a hurry. It's not a 100-meter race. Please do not be in a hurry. Water, sanitation and hygiene. WASH. My dear, NBS simply means nutrient-based subsidy. It's a subsidy initiative or a subsidy program of Government of India where based on the consumption, how many nutrients you consume, based on that, per kg, government will give you subsidy. That is called as a nutrient-based subsidy. Okay, let me solve the question now. Consider the following statements. Right, government has decontrolled the prices of all fertilizers sold in India. Wrong. It has not decontrolled all the prices. It has a decontrolled DAP. It has a decontrolled MOP. Right, MOP and DAP decontrol. Decontrol means what? Government doesn't fix MRP. Private sector or anybody who is selling it will be allowed to fix MRP. Okay. The government announces the subsidy for DAP and MOP under NBS. Yes, this statement is true. Right, under nutrient-based subsidy, which was introduced from the year 2010, government will announce a subsidy for both DAP and MOP. Third one, India imports all the required DAP and MOP. My dear, please understand, certain percentage of DAP is imported. Right? Certain percentage of DAP is imported. All of MOP is imported. Is my statement clear? We produce the DAP in India. We produce the urea in India. But the demand is much higher compared to what is the production. So we end up importing DAP, MOP as well as urea. But in case of MOP, please remember this, we do not produce that in India. Why? The resources that are needed are not available. 100% of MOP we import it. Okay, MOP stands for muriate of potash. Muriate of potash. Okay, so third statement is wrong. Only 2 is correct. Right option for the question will be option A, only 1. Okay. And there's a learner, Sakshi is asking, from where do we import fertilizer? My dear, multiple countries are there. Multiple countries are there, right? Somebody said A is the correct answer. Yes, A is the correct answer. Okay. So multiple countries are there. For example, we import from Russia. That was there in the newspaper. We import from many of the Middle Eastern countries. We import from, South American countries, etc. Multiple countries are there. For different fertilizer, different list is there. Okay, done. Everybody is okay. Now let me go to the next article, Kanda Express. Kanda Express. Now before you start asking what is a Kanda, or before you start scratching your head as to what is meaning of Kanda, Kanda is a Marathi word which essentially means onion. Simple. Which means onion. And why Kanda Express is there in the current affairs? Listen to me carefully. In some of the states or regions in the northern part of India and the northeastern part of India, there was a huge scarcity regarding onion availability. Onion, onion or kanda, whatever you call it. So there was a huge scarcity for this particular agriculture commodity. And when there's a scarcity, obviously it will lead to increased market prices. It will lead to higher market prices. People will start suffering. Even right now, if you go to market and check, onion prices, right, on an average is around 100 rupees per kg. And trust me when I say this, in the coming days, expect it to further rise up. Expect it to further increase in the coming days. Why? Production has been disrupted. So come back to the point here. In northern region or in the northern cities in India, as well as some of the northeastern states, there's a problem with the availability of onion and the market prices started shooting up. Now listen to me very carefully. One of the ways that the government can basically cool down the market price is by intervening in the retail market. All of you understand the term retail market? Retail market is the one where you will go to purchase, I will go to purchase. Individuals. Quantity is lesser. So one way to control or reduce the market prices of commodities is by intervening, by basically entering into retail market. How so? Government will procure and directly start selling it to retail buyers. It has done that in the context of pulses. It is doing this in the context of tomatoes, etc. In the past, it has done that in the context of onion as well. So one way is intervene in the retail market. Another way is intervene in the wholesale market. And this is the important point. Intervene in the wholesale market. What do you mean by wholesale market? Where buying and selling is done between two different parties who neither of them are consumers. Are you able to understand this? Neither of them are consumers. That is, a company will sell something to another company. It is done in a wholesale market. And why will the second company purchase it? They will purchase so that they will sell it to customers. Wholesale market, where quantity of goods bought and sold will be very, very high. So one way to intervene and cool down the market price is in the retail market. Another is the wholesale market. And please remember this, Kanda Express is the intervention by Government of India in the wholesale market. Be careful. It's an intervention by Government of India in the wholesale market. What do you mean by this? Government of India procured around 1600 tons of onion from the Nasik market. Nasik is a place in Maharashtra. It procured 1600 tons of onion in Nasik, transported these onion from Nasik to Delhi and did not sell it directly to customers. No, right? Understand this. Did not sell this to directly customers. What they did was they sold it to middlemen, that is traders. This 1600 ton was introduced at certain base price in, let's say Delhi market. And this same thing has been done in multiple cities in the northern region of India, northern part of India and northeastern part of India. So essentially what Government of India has done, and remember this, mind you, this is being done by the government for the first time using railways. Right? Are you able to understand this? In the wholesale market, to this large extent, Government of India is intervening for the first time using railways. And that's the reason Kanda Express has become so much famous now. So 1600 tons of onion procured from one region of India, transported using railway network and introduced this in the wholesale market, that is not directly to the consumers but to traders so that supply in the wholesale market increases. And when the supply of commodity in the wholesale market increases, the wholesale market prices will cool down. And if the wholesale market prices will cool down, automatically the retail market prices will also cool down. This is basically the importance of Kanda Express. Everybody is able to understand this? Everybody is on the same page with me, right? So remember wholesale market. Remember why it is called as Kanda, right? Or Kanda Express. Is it only targeting Delhi? No, right? Multiple regions, multiple cities in the northern part of India are facing this issue. Okay, so these are certain important points. Again, sir, where can I use this? Question on this can be asked directly in the prelims. For example, have a look at this. This sort of a question. Or you can use this to write an answer where if the question is, what are the measures undertaken by the government to cool down food inflation, to cool down overall inflation, you can use this point. In fact, the UPSC had asked a question on measures of Government of India to cool down food inflation in the recently concluded mains examination in UPSC. Done? Now let's solve this. Which of the following are the measures used by the government in the wholesale market? I have given you three options. Before you start asking what is the long form, etc., ENAM stands for E-National Agriculture Market. E is electronic. Kanda Express, just now I have discussed. OMSS stands for Open Market Sale Scheme. Open Market Sale Scheme. So, right, how many of the above are correct? How many of the above are correct? Right, which of the measures are used by the government in the wholesale market? Only one of them? Of course, only one of them. If remaining two are wrong, it has to be only one of them because we have discussed Kanda Express. So you can't go right, let's say wrong there. Please do not type D. Right, I hope you understand. None of you should be typing D. If you simply type D, I will realize that you did not listen to even a single word that I have discussed in the last 10 minutes. So option cannot be D. It has to be either A, B or C. Let's solve it. Let's solve. Electronic National Agriculture Market. Okay. What is this Electronic National Agriculture Market? Farmers will take the crop to APMC, Mandi, and get the crop listed in the portal. That is Electronic National Agriculture Market. And who will purchase this particular crop? Bidding will happen, competition will be there, and the crop is purchased by traders. Crop is purchased by food processing companies, etc. Not you, not me, who are individuals. So it is basically the bigger companies, traders, etc. who will participate and purchase food grain. It has to be wholesale market. So first one is correct. Second one is Kanda Express. We have discussed this hardly 10 minutes ago. Correct. Third one is Open Market Sale Scheme, which has been conducted by the Food Corporation of India very, very recently. Under OMSS, the Food Corporation of India will introduce the buffer stock, additional stock in the food grain to traders. In the open market, it is sold to traders. And the traders will purchase the food grain. Supply of the food grain in the market increases, retail prices will cool down. So can I simply say OMSS, because it is conducted with the traders participating in this, it's a wholesale market initiative, right? So first is correct, second is correct, third one is correct. Right option for the question will be option C. All the three are correct. Okay. Now, last article for the day. Very small article. The Finance Ministry in its monthly review has raised a certain concern regarding slowdown in urban demand. Now, what are the important points that you need to note here? And these are again there in the handout. Just listen carefully. After the class is over, download and read and revise. Now listen carefully. Whenever the goods are produced or services are produced, these are sold either to a consumer who is from the rural India or from the urban India. It has to be sold to either one of them. Right? Some of you will simply say, no sir, I will neither sell to rural Indian consumer nor urban Indian consumer. I'll simply export. Good. Even if you export, because it is produced in India, anyways it will be counted as part of India's GDP. But more importantly here, consumption, right? When you calculate GDP through expenditure method, the private consumption accounts for large chunk of GDP. More than 50% of total GDP under expenditure method is because of the consumption. Now, when you talk about consumption, the consumption can happen from the rural market, can also happen from the urban market. But in recent times, the Government of India's document itself, that is Finance Ministry's monthly review, says the growth in the urban demand is actually slowing down. The growth rate is actually becoming smaller and smaller, and that's a cause of concern. Why? Urban demand generally accounts for very large component out of the total consumption expenditure. It accounts for a very large chunk of it. And if urban demand is actually slowing down, it also is an indicator that in the coming days, the overall expenditure, consumption expenditure, mind you, come under pressure. And this might overall have an impact on production, because if the consumption expenditure is going down, demand will go down, production will go down, GDP will be affected, employment would be affected. Rather than having a virtuous cycle, you might end up having a vicious cycle. So that is a cause of concern here. So now the question arises, why is that urban demand is going down? What is the reason behind it? The primary reasons for this slowdown in the urban demand are: one, inflation rate is higher. Inflation rate is higher, especially core inflation and food inflation. When inflation rate is higher, households will spend a lot of money because they will have to purchase food grains, vegetables, etc., etc. Now the household will realize, because they are spending more money on essentials, demand for other goods and services will be controlled. They will hold their purses, they will control their expenditure in case of other goods and services. For example, very recently we celebrated Diwali. Diwali in one region, Deepavali in another region. Whatever the name you use it, don't worry. It was a festival. Now during festival time period, generally the demand for consumer goods is very, very high. Even this year, the demand was higher, but the growth rate in the demand was much, much lower compared to what was actually expected and seen over a period of time. The growth rate was very, very low. And the reason that they have cited is essentially urban demand. So the concern is inflation rate is higher, which will reduce the expenditure in other goods and services. Second one is growth rate in incomes. Growth rate in the incomes. This is also a very important reason. The growth rate of earnings in rural households is higher. It is faster compared to the growth rate in the incomes of urban households. And when the households in urban India are not earning higher amount of money, are not able to earn more amount of money, it will create uncertainty. It will create doubts in the minds of the consumers. That is, what will happen after 2 months if my incomes do not increase? Expenditures are increasing, but my incomes are not increasing. So that essentially will lead to, again, conservation of expenditure. Rather than spending more money, they will start saving more and more money. So these are some of the reasons which have been cited by the government as well as various experts to basically say there is a slowdown for goods and services in urban India. But having said so, understand there is one more important point that has been mentioned. That is, they're saying there is a K-shaped demand. They're saying there is a K-shaped demand that is being observed in urban India. They will use either the term K-shaped demand, or they will also use the term premiumization. Premiumization of demand. What does it mean? The demand for premium goods, that is luxury goods, is increasing. The demand for premium goods, these are costly goods, the demand for that is increasing. But the demand for other commodities which are consumed by a common man, a common household, middle income household, etc., the demand for that is not increasing. And this basically indicates that the people who are basically consuming, that is purchasing these premium goods, these are rich people. The people who are rich are spending more money. They are purchasing more of these luxury goods. But what about a middle income household? What about a poor household, etc., which is residing or which is present in urban India? Their incomes, the rise is not so much. They are holding on to their money rather than spending money today. Right? So this actually is expected to create a problem for many companies such as vehicle companies, fast moving consumer goods, etc., etc. So that is a cause of concern which has been raised by the Ministry of Finance in its monthly report regarding urban demand slowdown. So these are the various articles that I wanted to cover with all of you people, totally 8 things or 8 articles. Again, I reiterate this. I hope all of you just sat and listened attentively to whatever I discussed. If you want the handouts, the PPT, etc. of this particular session, all you need to do is very simple. This is the QR code. Scan the QR code. Join the Telegram channel. Right? Very soon, you will get the handout as well as the PPT on this very same channel. Okay? Now, if you people have any kinds of doubts, please do let me know. Otherwise, we can close the session. Any doubts? Any concern regarding whatever we have discussed in the last 2+ hours? Anybody has a doubt, please do let me know. And again, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button if you like these initiatives. Sir, where to send answers for these descriptive questions for evaluation? My dear, are you part of, right? Let's say, are you a subscriber to Unacademy? If you're a subscriber, there is a particular feature where you can upload the answers and get your answers evaluated. Aspiration to action means, sir, in Lapata topic. My dear, please understand, in case of, these kinds of events where there is a shortage of labor force, you need to basically promote more and more participation. How can you do that? Ensure, more expenditure is done in healthcare so that dependence on women in the household on care aspect of, let's say, the services will be reduced. More and more jobs can be created which are specifically tailored, which are specifically requiring these kind of working classes, etc. Right? So I hope you understand. The government can implement, even with the private sector, they can make policies, implement infrastructure, implement various other changes in the policies which will promote more and more women participation. Okay? Harshu, is customs union sort of cartelization? No, my dear. Right? No, it's not a cartelization. It's basically a grouping of countries. Sir, MSP meaning Marley Princess. MSP stands for minimum support price. The minimum support price essentially is a price which is paid by the government whenever they procure food grain from the farmers. That is called as a minimum support price. And the MSP, remember this, whatever be the market price could be higher or lesser than the MSP, doesn't matter. Once the government announces the MSP, the government will purchase the food grains at MSP. Whatever be the market price, they will pay MSP. Okay? Kiran Kadak. Sir, why NTB increases? My dear, in the recent times, across the board, in multiple countries, is there a trend of rising protectionism? Think of it. Is there a trend of rising protectionism? That is, just wait for a couple of months. You will realize what kind of protectionist policies can be implemented by countries. Let Mr. Donald Trump become the president now. Right? You will see a huge number of protectionist measures being implemented by USA. Get ready for the ride now. Right? Next 4 years will be a big wave, a big ride like this, where you will see such huge volatility being created by a major market in the global economy, that is USA. So, in the last couple of decades, the countries have reduced tariffs. That is, they have reduced tariffs because they are supposed to do that under World Trade Organization guidelines. Right? I hope you understand. Right? Under World Trade Organization guidelines, you are supposed to reduce tariffs. Right? So, in order to protect their own economy, because once you sign an agreement, imports will suddenly rise. So, in order to protect their economy, they have consistently kept on increasing non-tariff barriers. They have kept on implementing non-tariff barriers. Done? Okay. Any other question? Any other doubts? Please do let me know. Any other doubts? Any other confusion, etc.? Okay. Question by Harshu. Sir, then why India not signed any customs union? Right? It entirely depends on respective member countries. There is no compulsion that you should sign a trade agreement in the first place. There is absolutely no compulsion. It is entirely your prerogative. It is entirely your decision. For example, we want to sign a trade agreement with USA, but we can't force USA. It is entirely dependent on USA whether they want to sign a trade agreement with us. We are interested. We are interested because we have trade surplus with them. Right? But we can't force them. Is it okay? Done? In the same way, customs union, whether you want to be part of it or not, it is entirely your decision. Government of India says we don't want to be part of customs union, so they have not signed any agreement for customs union. Okay, non-tariff barrier example. My dear, let me connect it to current affairs. All of you have come across newspaper articles where they are discussing about toys, correct? Where they are discussing about toys. That is, until some years ago, India was majorly importing toys from another country, right? I'm pretty sure all of you will be able to guess the answer, China. But government of India imposed a lot of restrictions, especially in the form of non-tariff barriers, reduce the import dependence. Today, we are exporting toys. Sir, example of non-tariff barrier. There is a type of non-tariff barrier called as quota. Right? What does the quota term mean? In terms of quantity, it will be restricted. And quota can be imposed on imports also, can be imposed on exports as well. Is it okay? Right? It could be imposed on import, it could be imposed on export as well. For example, on export such as rice, right? Government of India in recent times has imposed export restriction in the form of quota itself. Right? So, quotas, exchange rate restriction, right? Not allowing exchange of one currency to another currency. Technical barriers such as quality control orders. In case of toys, Government of India has imposed quality control orders. All these are non-tariff barriers. Essentially, remember this. Tariff means taxes. Any other barrier apart from taxes will be classified as non-tariff barriers. Is it okay? Any other confusion? Any other question? Can we close the session? What is China plus one strategy? Lalita Prasad Yadav. My dear, under China plus one strategy, basically we promote manufacturers rather than being present only in China. They can diversify their manufacturing into other countries as well. That is, rather than manufacturing iPhones only in China, Apple will invest, set up manufacturing unit in India, which they have already done. This is China plus one strategy. Done? Okay, so last point, but important one. If you like this initiative, please do hit the like button. And if you get to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. And do not forget to recommend our YouTube channel to your friends who will also be able to get the benefit of all of these initiatives. That's it from my side. Take care. See you again next time when we will have the second session of Unacademy's Current Affairs Navigator. Good night.